Let me get the spice rub out of the way. While we are grilling our bison steak, I'm going to throw together a really quick sauce. You could call it a barbecue sauce. In my mind, it's more of a steak sauce. So that's what we're making, is a homemade steak sauce. First and foremost, what would steak sauce or barbecue sauce be without a little prepared ketchup? So I'm using just a store-bought ketchup. Try to use a higher quality ketchup that's not all corn syrup. I do want a nice tomato flavor, but more than anything, I want some vinegar out of that ketchup. So ketchup. Dijon mustard is going in next. One of my favorite things in the kitchen. Following our Dijon mustard, I've got some stone ground mustard that I'm throwing in there. Tastes really good. It also looks really pretty with the whole mustard. This is a little bit of wildflower honey that's going in next to give us a little bit of sugar there so we can achieve that sour sweet effect. Molasses, an ingredient that I love to use in the kitchen, and molasses is actually quite good for you. So try to get it into more of your food. This is some horseradish. This happens to be fresh horseradish that we grated at the school. You could most definitely use prepared horseradish if you don't have any fresh horseradish on hand. Throw in some prepared. And then I'm going to give it a little bit of kosher salt and some freshly ground black pepper. I'm going to give this a mix and see how thick we are. I have some cold water sitting here. If I need to thin this a little bit, I'll just simply thin it with water. But everybody has different tastes as far as a sauce like this goes. Some people like their sauces a little sweeter. Some people like them more sour. Some people like a little more heat. If you wanted a little more heat in this sauce, just do a few dashes of whatever type of hot sauce you like to use at home. That'd be great in here. You could add some Worcestershire if you like that. This is actually looking like a nice consistency, just to have a little sauce on the top of our barbecue rub steak. But I do want to taste it and make sure we are where we want. Perfect. As far as I'm concerned, it's really nicely balanced. That's going to be great on top of our bison. Set that on the side. And let's check this bison and see if it's ready for a turn. Remember, I said it will no longer stick to the grill. It'll release itself. It's not sticking, and it's looking beautiful. I've got those grill marks I was talking about. I can tell it actually seared, and I've got some nice caramelization. That color on there, those grill marks, equal a nice amount of flavor. I'm going to let this go another 3 or 4 minutes. Remember the touch test that I told you. This is already starting to spring back quite a bit when I touch it. When I touched it in a raw state, I was pushing on it, and it sort of felt like this portion of my hand. It wasn't springing back that quickly. Now we're shifting around, and it's actually starting to firm up a little bit. So if you need to use your hand, a lot of people use that as a guideline. Because your hand has different levels of fat, the fattier portion of your hand would feel like meat in a raw state. As your hand firms, you're cooking more and more. So again, medium rare. I'm going to say it's going to take about 2 more minutes. We're going to pull it off. We're going to allow it to rest. I'm going to throw a little bit of that homemade steak sauce over the top, and it's going to be beautiful. This is Chef Michael Montgomery back with a second segment on grilling. We've got our bison steak on the grill that we discussed in the last segment. Remember, that got a nice rub, and I have a homemade steak sauce waiting for that for when it comes off the grill. In the meantime, this is when I would start thinking about grilling whatever else I'm going to grill for my dinner. Tonight I just want to grill a few veggies, and I'm going to do some simple grilled vegetables with our bison steak. What I have are some leeks. It's getting into that time of year where we're going to get some local leeks. So what I've done, I've taken the whole leek, split it down the center, as you can see. I pulled off the exterior stalks. They get pretty fibrous, the really dark green stuff. Isn't that pleasant to eat? And I made sure I thoroughly rinsed the leeks under cold running water. So I hold the leek this way and let the water flush down through, and all that sandy dirt that the leeks are grown in will get out of there. Our leeks are ready to go, and I've also allowed the leeks to dry. Any vegetable you're going to throw on the grill, most definitely wash it, but also allow it to get thoroughly dry before we throw it on the grill. And I'll explain why in just a moment. I also have a red bell pepper, a sweet yellow onion, and then some really beautiful local asparagus. This asparagus needs to be trimmed down just a little bit. So what I did earlier is I snapped one. This snap test tells me where the asparagus is getting pretty fibrous. So the asparagus from about this point down is a little too fibrous to eat. It's really good to save and use for a stock if you're going to make asparagus soup or something like that. Don't throw it away. Otherwise, if you're just going to grill the asparagus, you can keep it in your freezer in a Ziploc, this portion of the asparagus, for the next time you want to make a quick soup or a quick veg stock. You'll have some frozen asparagus on hand to use. So I'm going to trim the other two down, getting rid of that fibrous end, and our asparagus is ready to go. The leeks, like I said, split in half. I'm going to grill them exactly like that. They're ready to go. Red bell pepper, I'm going to cut straight down through the center. And I'm not going to waste any of my bell pepper, so I don't cut off any of that curl. Bell peppers are too expensive. I am going to just pull out the seeds, pull out the vein, and leave all of that lovely edible flesh. Just popping the top right off, getting the seeds out. Instead of doing any extra trimming, I don't want to waste anything there. And then all I'm going to do to these is break them down into large planks, is what I call them. Just some large pieces that will be manageable on the grill. So I'm going to say maybe I'll take these into thirds. Looks pretty. And try to keep your vegetables the same size. All of my peppers should be cut the same way so they grill evenly. Bison, I don't want to forget about our steak. I'm going to once again do that test where I'm pushing on it to feel how firm it is. This has been on about another 4 minutes, so I've done 4 minutes per side. This is actually done and ready to come off the grill. Springing back when I'm touching it. I've got really beautiful caramelization on both sides. So I'm going to put this over to the side on a plate and allow it to rest. The resting is actually going to allow those juices that would typically just gush right out of there if you cut into it immediately. Those juices will actually settle back inside the steak that way. I'm going to get my grill adjusted now for the vegetables. The steak, once again, I started with a very high flame. Grilling is a high heat cooking method, so certainly if you're grilling something like steak, fish, chicken, highest heat possible. You can always back down the heat after the protein gets on there, but to start, you should most definitely have the highest heat possible. For vegetables, I'm going to back it down a little bit and do more like a medium to a medium high. The same rules apply for your outdoor grills.